Hey, it is Friday in the park, and it's overcast and kind of muggy out, and everyone's feeling a little bit logy because we can't do humidity in Portland. We can't, total wimps about it. But I was thinking all day about a friend of mine who passed way too young. A friend of mine by the name of Andy Buzan. He's a core member, the founding member of the Third Floor sketch comedy troupe that I worked with, and there's a couple of instances. It would have been his birthday, and so I've been thinking about him, and one of the instances that just keeps popping in my mind is we were performing in Chicago, and we performed in Chicago for the sketch festival there for about 5 years in a row, in the 2000s, early 2000s, mid 2000s, somewhere in there. And but it was always the first week of January, so it was like negative 50 degrees out with a 75-mile-an-hour wind. You know, it's just like the brutalest time you can be in Chicago, where like you fear to go outside for fear that your lungs will immediately freeze as soon as you take a breath, and you will just die like a popsicle in the street. And that doesn't happen, but it sure feels like it. But we're had some of the very best times in Chicago, and Andy and I and a few of us were coming home from some party, lots of partying, and we had been warned that the Bears football team was playing a playoff game, and or if they didn't win the game, they weren't going to make the playoffs. If they won the game, then there's a chance they'd be in the playoffs. So we're warned that if they lose, then wow, we better be careful, because the town's going to get really upset. And we'd done a show, and we were out partying, and we were walking on the street, and the angriest guy I've ever seen was witnessed by Andy and I. Come slamming out of the front door of this bar in front of us on the street in Chicago is this guy, and he just bellows, "Whoa!" And then he hauls off and punches an oak tree as hard as he can. And this is a frozen tundra. You might as well be you punching stone, but this guy didn't even seem to notice. This big burly guy, and to this day, the angriest guy that Andy and I decided at that point, we'll never see an angrier guy than that guy, the guy that punched the tree. And forever, with sense memory and remembering angry people in my acting, he always comes to mind, that angry guy punching the tree. But one of my favorite stories, Andy and I lived together in a big house in Portland, 3-bedroom house. There was like 7 of us living there. Huge place, 2-story. We called it the boy house because so many of us boys were living there, and it was a party house. And the basement was huge, and part of it was redesigned to have a bar and room for a band to play, and big backyard. Only problem with the place is that right behind us was the Rhinelander. It's a German restaurant, so in the evenings, every evening, we had to hear Edelweiss, Edelweiss over and over again. But they had a good happy hour. So anyway, it is my 40th birthday. And my girlfriend at the time was really good at putting together parties, and she did not fail. This is really the best birthday party I've ever had, my 40th birthday party. And yeah, band playing in the basement, house loaded with people, and I'm in the kitchen and drinking heavily with my friend Andy, and I'm talking to him, and I notice crawling on his head is this big black fly, and he doesn't notice it, and we continue talking, and it's just hanging out on his head. And I finally just say, Andy, you got a big black fly on your head. And in one move, like a ninja, he snaps his hand to the top of his head and makes a fist with his hand and pulls his hand away and goes, I got it. I go, no way did you just grab that fly off of your head like a ninja. You've drank like a whole bathtub full of bourbon tonight, so I can't even imagine you'd have the skill to do that. It's like, no, it's in my hand right now. I'm like, no way is there a fly in your hand. And this went on for a while. He's like, Kevin, you gotta have faith in people. You know, if I tell you that there's a fly in my hand, then you got to have faith that there's a fly in my hand. I'm like, okay, they've pulled tricks on me before, you see, and so I'm savvy at this point. I'm like, no way, Andy, you're not getting me with that. And I walk away, and I party on. And about an hour later, I stumble back into the same area as Andy, and he's still got his hand in a fist, and he sees me from across the room, and he holds it up like stand and deliver. I still got it in my hand. And I'm like, no way. Do you have a fly in your hand? And by this point, he's got like 3 or 4 other people around him who some are convinced he has a fly in his hand, and some are like me, very dubious that he's just making it all up. And I come over to him and I go, Andy, just give it a rest. You don't have a fly in your hand. And he goes, okay, you're right. I don't have a fly in his hand. And he opens his hand, and the big black fly flies away. Like an hour later, he'd held that in his hand the entire time. And that is the kind of Andy thing that I miss the very most. But with that, I will leave you. Hope you're having a nice Friday. And I will talk to you and on. And on and on and on. Bye.